energy is not as dangerous as people say it is. In fact, if all proper precautions are taken, then it poses little risk to health. When I say this, the majority of people think about the 3 Mile Island and the accidents that happened there and in other areas like Chernobyl. In 3 Mile Island specifically, there was a leak in a reactor core that led to overheating. This reactor was not stopped because of human error, and the nearby area was contaminated by radioactive material. Now, this was not a fault of the nuclear reactor itself, but of the people that were operating it. This is because no such incident had happened before and no one knew how to prepare for it. Here on out, many people working in nuclear plants expect these kind of accidents to happen, and they take better precautions to make sure that it doesn't leak out of the core. And if it does, the fail safes are activated. Although that's why it's really easy to avoid and stop these accidents, because all nuclear plants have fail-safe mechanisms to activate the backup containment system in the circumstance that something goes wrong with the process. In fact, 3 Mile Island had this fail-safe, but was ignored and not activated by the workers, like I said earlier. In addition, the minimal number of these accidents have been confined to the actual plant instead of spreading, which is why we don't really hear of all the other incidents because they haven't made that big of a impact on the people or the environment. And apart from Chernobyl, in fact, no nuclear worker or member of the public has ever died as a result of exposure to radiation due to a commercial nuclear reactor incident. Now, this shows that statistically, nuclear energy is very safe because not many people die or have incidents from them. And another risk that people tend to bring up is terrorist attacks that they could tend to go for these nuclear plants and attack them for maximum damage to an area. This amount has also been minimal throughout time and statistically does not prove a bigger impact than the other issues discussed, like the radiation and hazardous waste that could leak into the outside world. There was a study done in the year 2007 relating to the nuclear accident happening at Fukushima and its impacts. From there, we learned that no direct deaths of the disaster had occurred. All the deaths that had occurred were from the evacuation procedures and displacements of populations. In fact, in 2018, the Japanese government reported that one worker had since died from lung cancer as a result of the exposure from the event. To compare to the safety of different energy sources, the researchers compared the number of deaths per unit of energy that is produced by them. And they found that for nuclear energy, that was far lower than other forms of energy, such as coal. And if we're looking at the numbers, nuclear energy results in 442 times fewer deaths than the dirtiest of coals, 333 times fewer than coal, 250 times less than oil, and 38 times fewer than gas. And this study was done in Europe, where the anti pollution regulations were far ahead of many countries in the world. And even with all these regulations in place, nuclear energy happened to far surpass all of them in its safety for its workers. And in relation to other electric powered plants, such as coal mines, there is not the risk of air pollution, which kills 5 million people prematurely every year because of the fossil mass and biomass burning and creating these atmospheric clogs. The accidents caused in these other factories have also been statistically higher, ranking highest in mining of coal, uranium, and rare metals, although not as much with uranium and rare metals, but more with coal and oil and gas extraction. In addition, greenhouse gases, which is perhaps the most widely discussed downside in nuclear production, creates a hazard for everyone in the world because there is less of an ozone to protect us from UV rays, and also because we are contaminating the air for many people that breathe it, and they have to face the consequences of these things. These consequences will not be felt with nuclear energy, with which, like I said before, only releases steam into the atmosphere. And it's not to say that this doesn't have any negative effects at all, but simply that it is relatively less than these other forms of energy. So by far, it is the safest form of electricity. far safer than fossil fuels, which is contrary to general and popular belief. And that's mostly because for most of our years using the coal as electric energy, we haven't really looked at all of these other options. And things like renewable energy have been used more than nuclear energy, so we find difficulty in trusting it. But the more we know about nuclear energy, the more we can trust it, and we need to change this trend since that's been happening for the past 50 years. In fact, in the future, many scientists think that we will all switch to nuclear energy, which for a large portion of the reason is that because it's so much safer for the people working there and for people around the world. Thank you. And next time when we come back, I'm going to be talking about my last point, which is going to be about how the nuclear energy is very efficient in terms of energy as well. So I hope you guys learn a little bit about what it means for the energy to be safer than other forms of energy and why nuclear energy poses little risk to people working there and people around the world. Thank you.